interesting edition of Justice Forum. We come here, we dissect the issues, we discuss them, and globally, we come here each week trying to clearly delineate some of the many challenges facing the world. In this edition today, we are going to be
Chief Justice.
Is corporate greed at the expense of the common man or the common woman. Interesting edition of Justice Forum. We come here, we dissect the issues, we discuss them, and globally, we come here each week trying to clearly delineate some of the many challenges facing the world. In this edition today, we are going to be coming to you as we do usually from Western Pennsylvania. And of course, my guest joining me is coming from Liberia, Monrovia, Liberia. We had a difficulty the last time trying to connect with Francis Colee due to internet connectivity and some of the challenges associated with it. But we are grateful that Francis can join us today. We want to be intentional. We want to continue the conversation about rights, issues of justice in Liberia, and the background around the land grab. We know historically from the very beginning of the Berlin Conference in 1885, when the European countries decided and connived to carve Africa. That struggle has existed since the very beginning of imperialism, colonialism, and even after the freedom movement in Africa. It's still a conversation that is continuing. And it's not only in Africa, but also all parts of the world where indigenous people are threatened, their way of life are threatened, their habitat are threatened by major conglomerates, by organizations, corporations whose only interest is corporate greed at the expense of the common man or the common woman. Today, we're going to be looking at Liberia as a case study. We look at Liberia, and we are glad to have with us Francis Colee. Francis is an activist. He is a Liberian, born, raised in Liberia, and that he went to school there, has been in the student struggle, come from very humble beginnings. And he's in this particular fight for justice and rights in Liberia. And it's good that we can have you with us here today. Francis Colee. Francis Colee happens to be the deputy director, as far as we know, and program coordinator of Green Advocates of Liberia. It's a social justice group an environmental group that is concerned about the well-being of the people of Liberia. It's concerned about the issues surrounding land. And land, as we know historically from the very beginning, as I indicated in my introductory statement, has always been the elephant in the room. It has always been the problem globally. People have gone to wars for land, and that Liberia experienced war, and after the fratricidal civil war, Liberia is still going through the crucibles of the vestiges of war that has affected the country, and every fiber of the nation is bruised, is broken. And the lack of knowledge produces anarchy, and as a consequence, it becomes even difficult for people, whether restoratively, justice-wise, to be able to bring about the peace, the sustainable peace that Liberia needs. And it's going to be quite difficult if the very inhabitants of the country are threatened, their way of life, where they live, their habitat. And this is why we come today to talk to Francis Colee from Monrovia, Liberia. Welcome to the show, Francis. It's good to have you with us today.
Thank you, Brazize. Yes, it's a pleasure to be here. Like I said, on this forum, you have decided to prioritize a very sensitive issue. And this has been also at the peak of our work here at Green Advocates. So I'd like to briefly maybe start, if this is the time now, that
Please do. Clearly state for us, make a case, what is happening in Liberia, and for the global audience to be aware of the territory in which you work as an advocate.
All right. So we are Green Advocates. So another name for is the Association of Environmental Lawyers. So this Green Advocate was founded by Attorney Afro Lahai Branel. He's currently exiled. He's in Boston. So a lot has happened along the way. But the key priority over the years have been how to empower communities using a right-based approach. And the reason for this is that at the end of the Liberian Civil War, a lot of the issues border around violations of community rights and the battle over land grab, as well as the issue of resource curse. So there was a situation where too many issues around how people were not involved in the extraction of the country's vast natural resources. We all follow the war years, the blood timber, the blood diamond, as they call that. And then we also know about the sanctions that were being imposed. So Green Advocate came on the scene to try to work with the local communities to try to address the issues around land grab, the issue of environmental concerns, the awarding of concessions outside the free, prior, informed consent of local communities. And of course, awareness around even the terms of the contracts, because even contracts meant for the local communities, the terms are so technical, so it's difficult to follow that. But for the sake of this discussion, I'm narrowing down the issue of land grab and to see how we can present more, how we have addressed that or how we have worked on that here in the country. So land grab, within the context of Liberia, I like that you went back to the history, the Berlin Conference. Interestingly, why it is true that Liberia survived the Berlin Conference of 1883, 84, 85, or whatever you want to call that. But back in Liberia, there was a form of, someone would say, some kind of internal colonization that showed that the government of the day did not recognize any other person besides itself. So this is what was happening at the time, that the government at the time, and up to very recently, concluded that any land that was not deeded was considered a public land. And this is a category of land that was given out continuously. And they did this outside of the free, prior, informed consent of people that were affected. So the source of our problem started right there. When the government concluded that, look, once you did not have a deed to your land, then all other land in that category will belong to the government. So that is how things were. And I said until recently, meaning until as early as 2009, 2013, and then 2018. But before then, we were just governed by that same idea of, look, once you don't have a deed to the land, so all other land now deed there will belong to the government. So there were too many issues that were affecting the population at the time. The government too was being affected by those decisions. One, whether it was the government itself trying to find enough land for a government activity, that struggle was also there. So they were also being affected by that. Or whether it was customary communities where we really belong that were afraid that, look, their land could be grabbed by multinational corporations, they could not get compensation, or they just were going to lose that and maybe not come back to the land anymore. So those concerns were there. And of course, there were also issues around people living in urban centers, in the cities, where the fears were that, look, so many land disputes in the city. So if I get a parcel of land, how am I sure that this land will not be subjected to another form of debate, conflict, etc.? And that probably I could get evicted from such land. So meaning, three categories where they were concerned about government, concern from private citizens living in urban center, and of course also, like I said, the issue of the communities. So it means, in short, what I'm saying, the Liberia did not have a clearly defined land rights act. So everything was just, if it is not government, there was just no room. So we as civil society, in particular my institution and all civil society organizations, have started this work of engaging with the relevant authorities in government, in private sector, and also within the development community to see how there could be a discussion around how to address the issue of land right. So basically, where we stand, meaning for the communities, the issue has been that in the creation of economic activities, which people will call like foreign direct investment, the government continue to grab land belonging to customary communities, and they are doing this outside the free, prior, informed of local communities. They can go back to the first one that we all remember, the famous Firestone Agreement of 1926 and 27, yes.
Yeah.
That was a 99-year lease agreement that is still haunting the country.
Which doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense, of course. So a lot occurred around that time. People were evicted. We have worked even went to Owens Grove and some of those communities. Some communities were evicted to create what we call Firestone today. So the land grab, the evasion of people outside of their free, prior, informed consent started happening as far back as then. Then, of course, you come back to like Liberia Agricultural Company, then you come back to Standard Rubber Corporation those years. You have Guthrie Rubber that was in Cape Mount. Then, of course, you have Standard Rubber Corporation. This was like the most popular one before we had the Civil War. Then, of course, there were like other concessions, bone mining company. You have Lamco, etc. and etc. So what we have now recently is that as of 2009, once we had a new government in place after the war, the new government also decided to create economic activities under former President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. During this time, there was a huge land grab, I would say. So, for example, if you look at like Sammy Dabi is a rubber company. I mean, it's an oil palm company. They were giving concession up to 220,000 hectares. That's a huge stuff. And that is covering 4 counties. Imagine that. So you have Grand Cape Mount, you have Bomi, you have Bapolu, and you have Bon County itself. This is oil palm, large-scale oil palm concession. Then the government also awarded at the same time another concession to Golden Verorium in the southeastern region. That is covering 5 counties. So you have Rivers there, you have Sano, you have Grand Cru, you have River G. So there are like 5 counties covered by just a single concession. Now, what is important to underline here, which should also be important moving forward, is the implication of awarding large-scale land concessions, especially oil palm and rubber. If you see that Liberia in its situation, Liberia has about 42% of the remaining forest in all of West Africa. So if you know the carbon trade and the rare plus argument, even with our poverty rate, a sensitive government that is quite aware of its potential, because your forest is a natural forest, old blue forest. Your forest is serving as a carbon sink, not only for Liberia, but for all of West Africa. So if we have a government that is conscious of what we have, the issue of engaging in large-scale concessions that will lead to deforestation should be something you will discourage, because you want to conserve your forest. You want to use that to trade, because the whole issue of climate change has moved to the forest. Forest is now at the center of climate change. So I pushed the two because I said, if you award 220,000 hectares of natural old growth mature forest, covering 5 counties in the southeastern region where you have your remaining forest, and then you went ahead and awarded another 220,000 hectares to one concession called Sami Dabi, covering 4 counties that got also the remaining forest bed in the western area, then what do you really mean?
Yeah,
what do you really mean?
I think there is a serious problem in Liberia, and I wonder what has become of advocates and advocate groups. I get afraid when I talk to those who are involved in the human rights struggle, to bring some clarity and awareness as to what is happening. These agreements have been signed by our government, the past and the present, and giving no due consideration to the inhabitants of these communities. How do you do your work as an advocate who is working in the trenches? I'm greatly concerned about the issues of safety and the tendency of conglomerates that have so much power colliding with governments to be able to suffocate the voices of freedom, the voice of advocacy, and those who are quite abreast, aware of the issues in the midst of a vast ocean of despair and the lack of knowledge.
So the way I like to approach this question, are you there?
Yeah, I'm listening. Go ahead, Francis.
Okay, so I will first tell you our strategy, and the next thing we will do is to probably pick one case we have dealt with using that approach. Probably we can do like a Sarah Robert Corporation, which you already have.
That's correct. You have that in quote already.
Oh yeah, we have that in quote already, but we will, in discussing Sarah Robert Corporation, we'll look at what we did with them first using the IFC, the International Finance Corporation. We first file a complaint to the IFC. This other second phase of the complaint is in Liberian code now. But I can go back to talk to the one within the IFC and how the IFC dealt with it, or how the IFC is dealing with it. But in terms of approach,
about that. Yeah, the IFC approach and how you took the Cellular Rubber Corporation to the IFC. The second phase of it, as you indicated, is in Liberian court.
Yes. Yes, the second phase is in Liberian court. So because the one in the Liberian court, we try to avoid that, but we'll go back to the one that has progressed a lot. I can tell you what we did there and where we are. But in terms of approach, so as a human rights organization, one way we have worked to protect community better using 2 approaches. We have tried to enforce existing provisions or existing legal provisions within the Liberian environment. So legal provisions will be, for example, provisions in the Constitution applicable to protecting human rights. We have gone for that to use that in the meantime. We have also used existing international grievance mechanisms or international commitment that Liberia have made that are applicable to Liberia. So we have used those two to protect our people. Again, like I said, using applicable Liberian laws or applicable international law that are applicable to Liberia, like I said. So we haven't used that. So like the Constitution, we immediately started using Article 15C. Article 15C is a very powerful tool for human rights advocates. Article 15C is the right to know, is the right to access information heard by the government and its functionary. That's a very big provision. So even a country like Liberia that did not sign a Freedom of Information Act at the time, because our current Freedom of Information Act came to be like 2010. But before that time, we're already using Article 15C to press for information from government, held by government and its functionary. That was one. Then, of course, the question about participating in the governance of the country, the natural resources, then we started going for like Article 7. So Article 7 of the Liberian Constitution is talking about maximum feasible participation of Liberians in the management of the natural resources and the economy. That's already huge. So if you are an advocate, that's already enough room for you to intervene, ask questions on behalf of your communities. So as human rights groups, we have been receiving these different complaints from communities affected by these different right violations. So what we normally do is to ask ourselves, where best can we have redress for the grievances brought to us? So like I said, in a case where we found that, because in where we are now in Liberia, because the government is interested in creating economic activities, most often the issue of economic, social, and cultural rights are not recognized by the Liberian arrangement. So if you went and if a community try to assess its right to say no to a development, the government is going to like brutalize that community. They're going to harass, intimidate, and arrest some of the community leaders, all because they have said no. And if you want to go to court on that, you're going to find it difficult for the court to easily recognize that, because the agreement they have is that government is trying to create economic activities, and but then you are trying to stop that. So very few people will understand you in that context. So what we do in order not to put communities in harm's way is like we do the research as lawyers, and like I said, we use international grievance mechanisms, meaning mechanisms that are binding on both the government and the company, or in most instances, binding more on the company. So that is bringing us now to how we apply that in one case. We have used that in many areas, but let's take Salah Rubber Corporation. So communities, several communities in the Salah Rubber Corporation area, 22 of them in 2013 approached us and then filed a complaint. In their complaint, they alleged that their rights were being violated. They were no longer able to make farm, and their livelihood were being destroyed by Salah Rubber Corporation. They said they were being displaced and that they had suffered water pollution. And they said they had desecration of their sacred sites and shrines. And yes, those were cultural violations. They also complain about gender-based violence. And so they talk about forceful evasion from their homes to make way for the concession. So as lawyers, we said, well, we decided to make a trip to Salah Rubber Corporation. And I had a good fortune to be on that team that went to Salah Rubber Corporation in 2013. And then we did an investigation. What we found was that the community, the allegations they had were quite material enough. So, for example, we could prove there was land grab. There were restrictions everywhere. Villages, were like our lead campaigner, Afro Lahab Brandon, normally would say Sabu. What is a Sabu? Is like there's a town, and then you just clear everything around that town and you leave the town. And they're like, so what happened? Oh, I did not invade the town. The town is there. But we are aware, especially as children from customary communities, that the town is not just the town. The land adjoining will make up the town. The town is just a place where people will spend the night and the next day they will go out.
That's right.
So if you destroy the river, you destroy where I will set the trap, where my palm wine is, where I will make the farm. If you remove all of that, you say, that is the town. You are in the town. So what we normally say is that you don't have to use a weapon, like what our lead campaigner Alfred Brandon would say. If you remove everything that a community depends on for a survivor, you don't need to say you need a gun to shoot them. You have just killed them.
Yes, you destroy that community completely.
You destroy the community. So, but what you have here is you have policymakers that are sitting and say, oh, they will give you 500 buffer zone. Look, what do you mean? You take the entire land. You give like 500 yards to the town, where even a backyard gardening is not even possible. You know. So in the case of Salah Rubber Corporation, when we visited, we found that, like I said, there was this land grab. Many of the towns were just sitting in the heart of the plantation with no other land to even be able to grow vegetables or to do backyard gardening. So we also visited towns that they said were demolished by the company, which means there was forced evasion in some of the area. Then there was the claim about economic displacement. In the communities we visited, they had to go outside of the concession to make farm. And that was costly for them, or it is still costly. Because what it told us is that these are customary communities used to growing, they're used to their shifting cultivation. So if they went outside of the concession to go and beg for a parcel of land to plant crops on the normally we tell that, look, when we do the harvest, we have to pay these people. Then, you know, so see what was happening. So economic displacement, we could see that was the case. Loss of livelihood, we were able to see that because one thing they did to them was before the company arrived or before the complaint was filed as far as 2023, some of the community have planted their own livelihood stuff. For example, they had like rubber planter, they have planting mangoes, oranges, all the fruits you can think about. Those community had them. And they were leaving those products to market and making a living out of that. When the concession arrived to expand, they destroy everything. In some area, they pay some compensation. In most of the instances, they did not pay compensation to the farmers. So they are still owing a compensation. So that was a clear loss of livelihood down there. I have my orange tree that I'm making money out of, and you just cut that down. You know, I have my rubber tree, and then you cut that down. And in the case of Sarah Rubber Corporation, what was quite pathetic was that Sarah Rubber Corporation cut down rubber trees and replaced them with rubber trees. That was quite funny. So the community told us, they said, some of us, we approach a company, we say, you are planting rubber. We already have rubber. Can you allow us keep our rubber? We tap the rubber and sell that to you. They said, no. You have to go. So they took down the rubber trees of the community.
Abuse of rights and rights violations.
Exactly.
About what is prevailing in Liberia. I think it's just a sad narrative. I am hoping that we really continue this conversation. My timer is reminding me that we have 10 minutes to go.
Okay.
But yeah, continue. We're going to find a time to come back and be able to talk to you from Monrovia about some of these perennial issues. They are quite challenging. They are difficult. And we have to be in the defense of our people. And I think you guys are doing a considerable work in Liberia. Yeah, continue as you were indicating, Francis.
So because of time, so what I would really say now, so I just try to show what we found, to show you that when we try to take up an issue against a multinational corporation, we first ask ourselves whether the community allegations are material enough. And like I said, in the case of Sarah Rubber Corporation, they were quite overwhelming. They were material enough. So what do we do when we gather such an information? As a responsible institution, we are also interested in problem solving. So our first approach was to present the finding to the company. And then we met SRC, we said, well, these are what the communities have said. These are the allegations. So we'd like to see how you can respond to that. And we are the legal team for this community. We represent them legally. So if you are interested in some form of mediation or resolution of this, we are prepared. And then Sarah Rubber Corporation review all the allegations. Some of them, like I said, we saw ourselves, and they dismissed everything.
Everything.
That they were they dismissed everything.
It's always that tendency. They have so much power that they can just usurp the rights of the indigenous people. Yeah. And so you took the The what? The IFC approach. Then since
So
Salala was not willing to listen to condemn all of their
exactly,
findings, what did you do?
exactly. So Salala was not willing. We presented the finding to the government and to the government about what we saw. Because normally in other concessions, in other areas like Sami Dabi and Bolivarian, we have already taken those concessions out of Liberia using the roundtable on sustainable palm oil. And there was a hot order on their operations. So the government was afraid that Sarah Rubber Corporation would probably run into one. So we said, well, instead of taking it higher, we want to bring it to you. So we met the government again and said, look, this is what we saw. So
What did
what
the
the government
government
has
do?
nothing. There was a guided tour. They said, can you show us what you saw? We said, yes. The current Minister of Internal Affairs was the one who was designated to go with us in the field. And then we went to Sarah Rubber Corporation together. And what he saw there, he too was convinced that there was serious human rights violations and that he was happy and maybe confused or shocked that the affected communities were not reacting to what they were experiencing. So government did nothing regarding the community, the complaint brought to their attention. So you know what will normally happen? We were still in the negotiation. What can you do? We don't want to take another action. In the process, there was a feeling that, Green Advocates have been bought. Oh, the reason why you're not hearing anything, SRC has already bought them. They paid them some money. So in May of 2013, in May of 2019, we decided to file this complaint against Sarah Rubber Corporation. So we went to the International Finance Corporation, the IFC, and the reason we chose the IFC, it was for obvious reason. Sarah Rubber Corporation already got a loan agreement. They have already credited like 10 million from, there was a 10 million loan from the IFC, and that loan, according to them, was to be used to rehabilitate the farm and then to expand the farm. So there are two issues they were doing there: rehabilitate the farm, expand the farm. So in that process, there was a human rights violation, like I said, during all those ones we highlighted. So the IFC in October of 2019 visited Liberia to do an assessment of the community complaint after they found that the community complaint was eligible for assessment because of the issues raised. So the IFC team was in the country. So they talked to SRC, they talked to the communities, and based on what they saw, they were thinking, what else could they do? One way they normally will do it is they advise the party, say, look, what we saw, we're thinking whether you want to go for a dispute settlement, a dispute resolution of this, so that it does not go to other levels, So they asked that. When they asked that, the communities were waiting. The community said they wanted to sit with SRC. Our people now.
Yeah,
they
but
been there all these years.
SRC was not willing. Were they willing?
SRC was not willing. They asked SRC was not willing. So they said, okay, but then, so because of that, then they said, but then the IFC said, but then saying we can have a dispute resolution to this, then we have to now address it during the compliance level. So they wanted now to come in the country and do a compliance assessment because that's what SRC asked for. October, the IFC was in the country. October 2020, the IFC was in the country and they did a compliance assessment. They did a compliance assessment and they found that the environmental and the social issues raised in the community complaint were very serious in nature. And they advanced the case to higher assessment. So a full investigation of the social and environmental issues was required. So this is where we are now with that case with the IFC and the affected communities. It's the same Sarah Rubber Corporation.
Yeah, and I want you to just hold it there. We're going to leave it in suspense because of the time that we have. But this is quite an interesting conversation on the Justice Forum, the service of the Christian Vision Broadcasting Network. Those of us who are believers, we believe in Christian social justice. We believe in the dignity and the rights of the people globally, and even the people of Liberia. And we would do all we can, working with you, Francis, along with your team. And I'm hoping the next time when we have our conversation, I want you to expand on the whole concept around the threatening of advocates, those who have a considerable interest in the well-being of the people, and see how we can connect with Lahai, Afra Brown,
Yeah.
and just how, in fact, he is exiled now, not in Liberia.
Yeah.
And I know that would take a considerable time to be able to
Yeah.
deconstruct. But
Yeah.
I'm grateful that you have joined us, and because of time, just wrap up for us in few seconds, and we are hoping to come back again another time. We will find another time sometime next
Yeah.
week to continue this conversation. It's very educational.
So again, I'd like to thank you for this forum. Like I said, this is where we like to be, especially I think one of the things the former president Ellen Johnson said around 2007, she said, in Liberia will have to go to war again. She said we'll have to be about land. She said that. And that's very serious. So if you look at the different things we have done, you see the resource-based violence arising from the land grab for multinational corporations. You can do the check around. Wherever there have been this massive land grab, we have been witnessing resource-based violence. Look, you can take level, you can go and take away customary land and deprive these people of making the living they had before. So in most of the concessions area, they have managed to create economic activities. They have created some employment opportunities. But what we are also seeing that the employment is no longer sustainable. So, for example, those who were regular employees are being downgraded to contractors. And you know what that means? An employee have full benefits. If they reduce it to a contractor, meaning if you have a $5, that's just your $5. Anything you are on your own. Employee status is better because it will go for labor law and all issue benefits, education, health, all addressed inside. What we see happening now is that most of the concessions in terms of the employment opportunities that were there are no longer sustainable. So the point now is that the economic case for the concession, the displacement and the violence our people witnessing, it's not sustainable. The economic case is not working. So the social case is the one that was never prioritized. So people are hurt. And in most instances, I can say people are worse off than they were before the arrival of the concession.
And we want to hold you there. We don't want to return to war as advocates, but I'm going to hold you there, Francis. I want to thank you so much for joining us from Monrovia, Liberia. Francis Colee, the Deputy Director and Program Coordinator of Green Advocates of Liberia, joining us on a very critical subject matter on the Justice Forum.